Hey everyone, so I wanted to start a new series called Masterpiece Cinema. I consider these movies to be the greatest movies of all time. Now, there's no specific criteria. These are just films that I personally consider to be the greatest of all time from whatever I've seen so far. Now, I could have done a list, but I don't want to because I want to go in depth into each and every single film that I consider as masterpieces and tell you why they are so amazing. And if you've never seen these films before, this is kind of like my pitch for you to go and watch these films. So I'll try to do this every week or whenever I can. And this is going to be a ongoing series because there's so much movies that I consider as masterpieces. I've given 10 out of 10 or like 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd ratings to a lot of films. But out of those 5 out of 5s, I don't consider every single one to be masterpiece. I enjoy them thoroughly, but certain films I consider to be like the greatest of all time movies. And if I ever have to recommend a movie to someone or a series to someone, I would say like, here are the movies that you should see. So this is a series called Masterpiece Cinema, and here's the first film or films that I consider you to go and watch that I consider to be some of the greatest films of all time. To start off the Masterpiece Cinema series, I gotta go with the Before Trilogy. This is the epitome of love. If you've never seen these films, please, for the love of God, go watch them. They are incredible. It will make you feel something. If you ever felt the emotion of love at one point in your life, you gotta watch these films, because if you ever fell in love with someone, if you ever dated someone, if you ever were engaged or married to someone, or still are, these films will evoke some sort of memory, situation, or experience with that special someone that was from the past or the present, and it'll make you relate to whatever you felt with that person, because these films are just so raw, they're so real, they're so relatable. And Richard Linklater, who's the director of these movies, you know who this person is because you've probably seen his films before. He's directed movies like Dazed and Confused, School of Rock, and also Boyhood. This is his magnum opus. This is his greatest piece of art, because these films are art. They're so real and they're so relatable, but at the same time, they just evoke something within you while watching it. And you're so enthralled and so encapsulated by whatever's happening that it just feels so unreal. It's like you're literally watching this real life couple go through the emotions and go through life, because the incredible thing is Richard Linklater and the stars of this film, who are Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke, they filmed these movies pretty much 9 years apart from each other. So the first film, Before Sunrise, came out in 1995. The second film, Before Sunset, came out in 2004. And Before Midnight came out in 2013. Sadly, we never got a fourth film, because even though they were separated by 9 years, technically after Before Midnight, the next film, if they were going to do one, should be out in 2022. But sadly, we never got any film in 2022. But yeah, you need to watch these films. And I'm going to tell you why. So Richard Linklater, who's pictured in this photo directing the two stars, Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, actually met this person by the name of Amy back in 1989. He met her at this toy store in Philadelphia, and they pretty much hit it off. He and her spent the rest of the night just talking with each other and just walking around the streets of Philadelphia. And sadly, he lost contact with her. And for years, he was trying to see if she was okay. He wanted to know how she was doing. And Before Sunrise was kind of like made in honor of her. And for years, he was just wondering how she was doing. But, I think it was in 2010 or somewhere around then where he found out that sadly she passed away in a motorcycle accident before the release of Before Sunrise. So this trilogy is pretty much based around that one incident. And that's the reason why these three films are so magical, is because it feels so relatable and real towards a person's like experience meeting someone that is a stranger at first, but getting to know them and kind of like unraveling the mystery that is love. Because in the first film, Before Sunrise, the story is pretty much boy meets girl, girl meets boy on this train ride. And they just get off at the same stop and they just spend the rest of the night just talking and getting to know each other. And obviously they're still like strangers, and there's still mysteries towards one another because they don't really know each other, but they're unraveling this like human emotion that is there. And it's just an incredibly well done film because, again, the writing feels like they're just talking. It doesn't even feel like a script, but ironically, there is a script. But when you watch the film, it just feels like two people just conversing, and it just feels so different from your usual films that you see when it comes to like romantic dramas or whatever. Because in some of those movies, you see like they usually throw in like pop culture references or jokes or whatever just to, you know, be like hip or whatever. But here, it just feels like something that is real. You see the awkward shyness that you have when you meet this person that you're kind of attracted to. You see the kind of like brazen kind of like bravado that you have when you try to impress that person too. You see like the kind of spontaneous nature that you have when you're trying to impress that person too. And again, Before Sunrise in the trilogy, I believe to be kind of like the magical film in the series. So if Before Sunrise is kind of like the magical, fantastical way of looking at love, then Before Sunset, which is the second film in the series, is kind of like that bittersweet reunion film. And again, I don't want to tell you what the story is because it is such a beautiful movie. It's a very short film, by the way. And I don't know if they actually did it in one take because like after the initial like 10 minutes of the movie, it just feels like this one shot take that just follows these two people going around Paris. And it's such a beautifully shot film. It is one of the most beautiful, shall we say, bittersweet movies you'll ever see in your whole entire life. Again, I'm not going to give you any spoilers because I want you to experience this movie for the first time without any sort of notion or knowledge about what could happen. But yeah, Richard Linklater and Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke do a brilliant job of capturing that feeling of what would happen when you reunite with a lover that you had from the past. What would you conversate? What would you say in terms of like how you're feeling? Would you be honest? Would you lie? Would you like try to, you know, get them jealous? Would you try to kind of rekindle that flame, or do you just let it be? And again, it is such an interesting movie because it captures such a brilliant like tension, but not in a salacious or kind of like evil or kind of like provocative way. It captures that tension in such an artistic way that it makes you feel the emotions that these two characters are having. And again, if the first movie was the happy, you know, adventurous film, this is the kind of film where it's kind of grounded more about like what really happens in real life when you meet an ex or meet an ex-flame. And again, these two films back to back are just brilliant watches and two of my all-time favorite movies of all time. And Before Midnight. Now, Before Midnight is kind of tough for me to talk about because I do like this film. I don't want to say I love it. I love the first two films to the point where like those both are 10 out of 10s. This film is more of like a 7.5 or 8 out of 10. It's a solid movie, but I can't really relate to it because, again, I don't want to give spoilers away, so I can't really talk that much about it if you've never seen it before. But again, it captures another aspect of love. So again, if the first film was the magical, fantastical way of looking at love, and if the second film is about like that bittersweet reunion, then the third film is another realistic, very grounded, and very rude way of looking at love. I will say that. It gets very awkward, it gets very tense, and it gets very emotional very quick after a certain point in this whole movie. And even though it is a little bit uncomfortable at times, it is brilliantly done again. Now, obviously, I can't really relate to that kind of situation because, again, knock on wood, I've never had that happen to me. But if you've ever been in this kind of situation with a loved one, you might watch this film and be like a little triggered, but it is a very brilliant movie too. And again, another testament towards showing this couple travel amongst time from 9 years in separation from the first two films, and seeing how they are at this point in their lives is, again, a brilliant stroke of filmmaking by Richard Linklater. And the cool thing about it is both Julie Delpy and Ethan Hawke helped write the story of this film too. In totality, this trilogy is a masterpiece in general, and it is a masterpiece of romantic filmmaking. If you ever felt any sort of love in your life, that youthful love, that vibrant or that bittersweet or petty love, these are your films and you need to watch them.